Benjamin Woolley. Last year, the German parliament made the controversial decision to return to Berlin from the sleepy backwater of Bonn. Even more controversially, they decided not to build themselves a new parliament, but to adapt the old Reichstag, a 100-year-old building that's been at the heart of the political and historical changes that have shaken Germany during that time. The job of transforming it into a modern seat of government fell on British architect Sir Norman Foster. We went to see how his plans were developing. The original Reichstag building was severely damaged by fire in 1933, just weeks after Hitler became Chancellor. Its burning symbolised not just damage to a building at Germany's constitutional heart, but also the end of the brief democratic era of the Weimar Republic. The parliamentary chamber was destroyed, giving Hitler the pretext to abolish basic democratic rights.
The Reichstag building cannot be, in my eyes, very closely associated with Hitler. Mainly because Hitler only was here 3 times. One time as a tourist in 1921. He wrote unflatteringly about the building and a postcard. Once to pay his respects to the Federal Council in 1933 on 3rd February. And the last time on the night of the fire on the 27th of February 1933. I think the sins of Hitler should not be visited upon the building.
During World War II, what was left of the Reichstag remained in government use, though Hitler's seat of power was now the Reichschancellery. When the Russians stormed the Reichstag in 1945, they saw themselves as capturing a central icon of German power. The Soviet assault was restaged in heroic films recorded weeks after the event, showing a nation in total capitulation. After the war, the ruins of the Reichstag stood as a desolate reminder of Germany's ill-fated attempts at democracy. The building also became an emblem of the Cold War, lying on the border between West and East. Following restoration in the late 50s and 60s, with a certain irony, the Reichstag was turned into a museum of the history of democracy. Last month, celebrations outside the Reichstag marked 5 years of German unity. And as the German people come to terms with life after reunification, the Reichstag is about to be transformed yet again. For architect Sir Norman Foster, the challenge is to reclaim the building from its complex and difficult history and to house the new unified parliament, or Bundestag, in the old Reichstag building.
In the 100 years that the building represents in terms of German history, I mean, it's every aspect of that history. But the design is not really for the Reichstag. The design is for the Bundestag, which will be housed in what was the Reichstag. So to that extent, it is a total transformation. And it will not be as you see it now from the inside or indeed from the outside.
When the German parliament decided to move back from the small-town anonymity of Bonn to a city and a building loaded with history, they held a competition to adapt the existing Reichstag building. The competition in May 1992 wasn't only open to German architects. In spite, or perhaps because of the building's past, 14 foreign architects were also invited.
I make no secret of the fact that I had very deep personal doubts about whether the thing wasn't, in a way, paying lip service, the idea that you would invite a group of foreign architects. And I'm delighted to say that I was proved totally wrong.
Foster asked me whether we really intended to give the job to a foreign architect if he won the competition, and I said yes, it's meant seriously, it's not just for show. And the interesting thing was that the 3 first prizes were foreigners. Norman Foster and Piet de Bruyn from Holland and Calatrava from Switzerland and Spain. And my impression was the foreigners had a more easy relation to the building. Germans somewhat felt got sweaty hands approaching the Reichstag.
The redesign proposed by Foster in 1992 would have topped the building with a modern transparent canopy, giving a sense of history tamed within a glass case. But in a Germany still reeling from the cost of reunification, this design was judged too expensive, and Foster was asked to submit another on a much reduced scale. In his revised scheme, Foster offered 4 variations on a transparent roof theme. German parliamentarians favoured a modern dome-like structure, intended to open up the old building and let in natural light.
If the building is transformed internally so that it reflects the reality of the democratic process, then it becomes totally different in every way from the Reichstag of the past, which was very much a closed building. And in that sense, it's open, it's answerable, it's transparent, and you can see the political process evolving and working. And so the role of the public in the planning, the ability, for example, to ascend easily to the roof, to be able to contemplate the horizon of Berlin, which is different depending on which direction you look. And in that way, the Reichstag is pivotal in its location. So that's important physically. I think it's important symbolically, philosophically.
It's more a matter of values shown in the architecture, values of democracy, and I think a parliament building in democracy should look different from a building in a dictatorship.
I don't think that you can express more or less democracy or openness or closedness with architectural means. To say that transparency can be achieved by having lots of glass is to disregard the fact that all the banks in London and Frankfurt are made of glass, and nobody knows what's happening behind those glass walls at all, except for the few people who sit behind them.
Balancing the desire for a modern parliament building with keeping the existing historical facade of the Reichstag has divided opinion. There are some who would like to see a rebuilding of the original dome, which once stood on the roof.
The idea of recreating a historic dome has been quite rightfully dismissed as a total anachronism. Has nothing to do with the needs of this building now and in the future.
Before the Reichstag is transformed by Foster and his team, it'll be given a very different treatment by the American-based artist Christo. Renowned for his large-scale environmental art projects, such as a running wall of nylon set across 25 miles of Californian countryside in 1976, Christo has spent over 20 years getting permission to wrap the Reichstag.
The fabric is not completely touching the stone, the surface of the structure.
Shrouding the Reichstag in cloth will focus attention on the symbolism of a building which has meant so much in its 100-year history.
The building will be freely hanging down, it will be secure on different volume by the tying with the rope.
You know that Christo is going to wrap it in next summer, and after that we'll begin tearing parts of it down and building, and when it emerges like a phoenix, maybe we hope it's the central institution of German democracy, and the building will be identified as the building of the Bundestag.
And the German parliament are due to take up residence in the Reichstag in 1998.